The loner rancher expected a simple bride, but a woman too stunning for him arrived on the stagecoach. Elias Boone was known as the quietest man in Red Hollow. His ranch sat far from town, where the land was wide, dry, and mostly empty. There were no close neighbors, no noisy roads, and no reason for visitors to come by. Elias liked it that way. He believed a man worked better when he was alone, with only the sound of wind and cattle around him. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise. He fed the horses, checked the fences, and worked until the sky turned orange in the evening. His life was simple, steady, and quiet, just the way he wanted it. But even a man like Elias could not ignore one truth. Running a ranch alone was hard. Some days, the work felt heavier than usual. The fences needed fixing, the cattle needed care, and the house, well, the house felt too empty. There was no one to talk to, no one to share a meal with, and no one to help when things went wrong. At first, Elias ignored these thoughts. He told himself he didn't need anyone. He had done just fine on his own for years. But winter had been long and difficult. One night, sitting alone at his table with a cold meal, Elias finally admitted something to himself. He needed help. That was how he made a decision he never thought he would make. He decided to find a wife. Not for love, not for romance, just for a simple, honest partnership. The next day, he rode into town and visited the small post office. The clerk looked surprised when Elias asked for help writing an advertisement. "A bride?" the clerk asked, raising his eyebrows. Elias nodded once. "Simple, hard-working, that's all." He chose his words carefully. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want someone who expected a fancy life or constant attention. He just wanted someone practical, someone who understood work and didn't ask too many questions. When the letter was sent, Elias felt strange. It was not fear, but something close to it. Still, he pushed the feeling aside and returned to his ranch. Days passed, then weeks. Elias almost forgot about the letter, until one afternoon, a reply arrived. The envelope was neat and the handwriting was clear. Elias sat at his table and opened it slowly. Inside was a simple letter. Her name was Clara Whitmore. She wrote politely and calmly. She said she was looking for a new beginning. She understood hard work and wanted a quiet life. Her words were simple, nothing fancy, nothing confusing. Elias read the letter twice. She sounded exactly like what he had asked for. After thinking for a long time, he wrote back and agreed. A few weeks later, another letter came. Clara would arrive in Red Hollow by stagecoach. That morning, Elias woke up earlier than usual. He didn't know why, but he felt restless. He cleaned the house, something he rarely did. He fixed a loose chair and even brushed the dust off the table. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than before. By midday, he rode into town. The stagecoach stop was quiet, just like everything else in Red Hollow. A few people stood nearby, waiting for deliveries or travelers. Elias stood a little apart, his hat low over his eyes. He didn't know what to expect. He had imagined someone plain, someone quiet, someone who would not stand out, someone simple. The sound of wheels broke his thoughts. The stagecoach arrived in a cloud of dust, its horses tired from the long journey. It came to a stop, and the driver climbed down. One by one, the passengers stepped out. A tired man with a heavy bag, an older woman holding a basket, a young boy looking around with wide eyes. Elias watched carefully. Then, the last passenger stepped down, and everything changed. She moved with calm confidence, even after the long ride. Her dress was simple, but it fit her well. Her hair caught the sunlight, and her face was bright and clear. There was something about her that didn't match the dusty town. She looked too remarkable. Elias frowned slightly. This could not be her. But then the woman turned, her eyes searching the small crowd. When she saw Elias, she walked toward him without hesitation. Her voice was soft, but steady. "Mr. Boone?" Elias felt his throat go dry for a moment. "Yes," he said. She gave a small, polite smile. "I'm Clara Whitmore." Elias stood still. This was not what he expected. Not at all. For the first time in many years, Elias Boone didn't know what to say. And as he looked at the woman standing in front of him, one thought became very clear in his mind. This was not going to be the simple life he had planned. Elias Boone did not speak much on the way back to the ranch. He sat at the front of the wagon holding the reins, while Clara sat beside him. The road stretched long and dusty ahead, and the quiet between them felt different than usual. It was not the peaceful silence Elias was used to. It felt unsure. Clara, however, did not seem uncomfortable. She looked around with calm interest, watching the wide land, the dry fields, and the open sky. Most people who came to Red Hollow for the first time showed worry or disappointment, but Clara only observed, as if she was trying to understand everything. After a while, she spoke. "It's very quiet here." Elias nodded. "That's how it is." She smiled a little. "I think I like that." Elias glanced at her for a moment, surprised. He had expected complaints, or at least some doubt, but there was none in her voice. Still, something bothered him. "You don't seem surprised," he said. Clara turned to him. "About what?" "This place," Elias said. "It's not easy living." Clara thought for a moment before answering. "I didn't come here for easy." Her answer made Elias quiet again. The rest of the ride passed slowly. The sun moved lower in the sky, and the air grew cooler. Finally, the ranch came into view. It was simple. A small wooden house, a barn, a few fences, and wide open land in every direction. Nothing special, nothing impressive. Elias stopped the wagon. "This is it," he said. Clara stepped down carefully. She stood still for a moment, looking at everything. The house, the barn, the sky above. Elias watched her closely, waiting for her reaction, but Clara only nodded softly. "It's honest," she said. Elias did not fully understand what she meant, but something about her words stayed with him. Inside the house, things were even simpler. A table, 2 chairs, a small stove, and a bed in the corner. It was clean enough, but not welcoming. Clara walked in slowly, looking around. "You live alone here?" she asked. "Yes." She ran her hand lightly over the table. "You take care of it well." Elias looked at the table. He had never thought about it that way. That evening, Clara helped prepare a meal. She moved carefully, learning where things were, asking simple questions when needed. She did not complain about the small kitchen or the basic tools. When they sat down to eat, the silence returned. But this time, it felt different. Not empty, just new. After a few bites, Clara spoke again. "You expected someone else, didn't you?" Elias paused. He could not lie. "Yes," he said simply. Clara did not look upset. She only nodded slightly. "Someone more simple?" she asked. Elias hesitated, then nodded again. Clara smiled faintly. "I suppose I surprised you." "That's one way to say it," Elias replied. For a moment, they both shared a small, quiet smile. Later that night, Clara stepped outside. The sky was full of stars, bright and endless. Elias followed after a moment. "You don't see stars like this in many places," Clara said softly. Elias stood beside her. "No." They stood in silence, looking up. After a while, Elias spoke, his voice low. "Why did you come here?" Clara looked at him, then back at the sky. "I wanted a new start," she said. "That's all?" She thought for a moment. "And your letter. It was honest. It didn't promise anything big or fancy. It felt real. Elias looked down at the ground. "I didn't have much to promise," he said. Clara turned to him. "Sometimes, that's better." Elias didn't answer. He wasn't used to conversations like this. The next morning came early. Clara woke up before Elias and stepped outside. The air was cool and the land was quiet. She watched the sunrise, taking in the new place that was now her home. When Elias came out, he seemed surprised to see her already awake. "You don't have to start so early," he said. Clara smiled. "I want to." That day, she began to learn the work of the ranch. It was not easy. Carrying water was heavy. The ground was hard. The tasks were new and sometimes confusing. But Clara did not give up. She listened carefully and tried again when she made mistakes. Elias watched her from a distance. He had expected her to struggle, maybe even complain. But she didn't. Instead, she kept going. By the end of the day, she was tired, but there was a small sense of pride in her eyes. "You're not what I expected," Elias said quietly. Clara looked at him with a gentle smile. "And you're not as distant as I expected." Elias didn't know how to respond to that. That night, as he sat alone for a moment, he thought about everything. Clara was different, not just in the way she looked, but in the way she spoke, the way she worked, and the way she understood things. She didn't seem out of place anymore. If anything, it felt like she was slowly becoming a part of the ranch. And that made Elias realize something he hadn't expected. Maybe the life he had planned was already beginning to change. Days turned into weeks, and life at the ranch began to change in quiet ways. At first, Elias did not notice it clearly. Everything still looked the same house, the same land, the same long days of work. But something felt different. The ranch no longer felt empty. Clara had brought a new kind of energy with her. She did not try to change everything at once. Instead, she made small improvements, one step at a time. One morning, Elias walked into the kitchen and stopped. The table was clean. Not just clean, but organized. The tools were placed neatly, and even the old curtains looked better, as if they had been fixed carefully. Clara stood near the stove, preparing breakfast. "Morning," she said with a small smile. Elias looked around. "You did all this?" Clara nodded. "It makes things easier." Elias sat down slowly. He didn't say much, but he noticed something. The house felt warmer, not because of the fire, but because of her. As the days passed, Clara continued to work hard. She learned quickly. She could now carry water without spilling, cook better meals, and even help with small repairs. One afternoon, Elias found her trying to fix a broken fence. "You don't have to do that," he said. Clara looked up, holding a piece of wood. "I want to help." Elias stepped closer. "It's not easy work." Clara smiled slightly. "Neither is anything here." Elias paused, then picked up a tool and worked beside her. It was the first time they worked together without silence between them. They spoke little, but it felt natural. Another change came slowly. People from town started visiting. At first, it was just one or two. They came with small reasons, bringing supplies, asking about cattle, or just passing by. But Elias knew the truth. They were curious. They wanted to see Clara. Elias expected Clara to feel uncomfortable, but she didn't. She greeted every visitor kindly. She spoke with respect, listened carefully, and made them feel welcome. Soon, people stayed longer than usual, and something strange happened. They laughed. Elias stood near the door one afternoon watching Clara talk to an older woman from town. They were smiling, sharing simple stories. He had not seen laughter in his home for a long time. After the woman left, Elias stepped outside with Clara. "You're changing this place," he said. Clara looked at him. "Is that bad?" Elias thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No," he said, "just different." Clara nodded softly. different can be good. Elias didn't answer, but deep inside, he agreed. That evening, as the sun was setting, they sat on the porch together. The sky was painted in soft orange and gold. The air was calm. Clara held a small letter in her hands. Elias noticed it. "From your old home?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Do you miss it?" Elias asked. Clara looked at the letter for a moment before answering. "Sometimes," she said. Elias felt something strange in his chest. He didn't understand it fully, but it made him uneasy. "You can go back if you want," he said quietly. Clara looked at him, surprised. "Is that what you want?" she asked. Elias looked away. "I didn't say that." There was a long silence. Then Clara spoke gently. "I didn't come here because I had no choice," she said. "I chose this place." Elias looked at her again. "Why?" he asked. Clara smiled softly. "Because it felt real. Because it felt honest." Elias frowned slightly. "And now?" Clara looked around, the land, the house, the quiet sky. "Now it feels like home," she said. Those words stayed with Elias. That night he couldn't sleep easily. He kept thinking about what Clara had said. She had chosen this life. She had chosen this ranch, and that meant one thing. She could also choose to leave. The thought did not sit well with him. The next day, Elias worked harder than usual, but his mind was not fully on the work. He kept noticing Clara, how she moved, how she spoke, how she worked without complaining. She was not just helping, she was building something. Not just a better ranch, but a better life. That evening, Elias stood near the fence, watching the sunset. Clara walked up beside him. "You've been quiet today," she said. Elias nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" she asked. Elias hesitated. Then he said, "Things are changing." Clara smiled gently. "Yes, they are." Elias looked at her. "And I'm not sure what that means," he admitted. Clara's voice was calm. "It means you're not alone anymore." Elias said nothing, but for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. And that realization changed something deep inside him, something quiet, but important. Spring came slowly to Red Hollow. The cold days became warmer, and the dry land began to show small signs of life. Green patches appeared across the fields, and the air felt softer than before. It was a season of change, and the ranch had changed too. Elias Boone stood near the fence one morning, looking out at the land. The same land he had worked on for years now felt different. Not because it had changed much, but because he had. Behind him, Clara stepped out of the house, carrying a small basket. "Morning," she said with a warm smile. Elias turned slightly. "Morning." There was something easy between them now. No awkward silence, no distance, just a quiet understanding that had grown over time. Clara walked toward the garden she had started near the house. It was small but full of life. Flowers and vegetables grew side by side, bringing color to a place that had once looked plain and empty. Elias watched her for a moment. "You've done a lot here," he said. Clara looked up. "We've done a lot." Elias paused. He was not used to hearing that word, we. But he didn't correct her. Instead, he nodded. That day they worked together like always, fixing fences, checking supplies, and planning for the next season. But something was different. Elias felt lighter. The work was still hard, but it no longer felt heavy. In the afternoon, they took a short break and sat under a tree near the house. Clara looked at the land with calm eyes. "It's beautiful," she said. Elias followed her gaze. "It's just land." Clara smiled. "It's more than that. It's a life." Elias thought about her words. For years he had seen the ranch as work, as responsibility, as something he had to manage alone. But now, he began to see it differently. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Elias stood quietly on the porch. He seemed deep in thought. Clara noticed. "You've been thinking again," she said as she joined him. Elias gave a small nod. "I have." Clara waited patiently. After a moment, Elias spoke. "When I sent that letter, I thought I knew what I wanted." Clara looked at him. "A simple life." Elias nodded. "Yes. No surprises. No complications." Clara smiled gently. "And now?" Elias took a deep breath. "Now I think I was wrong." Clara stayed silent, letting him continue. "I thought simple meant quiet, empty, controlled," Elias said slowly. "But that's not what it really means." He looked at her. "Simple can still be full. It can still be meaningful." Clara's eyes softened. "That's true," she said. Elias hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. "You changed things here," he said. "Not just the house, not just the ranch." Clara tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Elias looked out at the land, then back at her. "You changed me." There was a quiet pause between them. Clara did not look surprised. She only smiled, softly and warmly. "I didn't try to," she said. "I know," Elias replied. "That's why it matters." The sky above them turned golden, then slowly darker. For a moment they stood in silence, but this silence was not empty. It was peaceful. After a while, Clara spoke again. "When I came here, I didn't know what to expect," she said. "I only knew I wanted something real." Elias nodded. "And did you find it?" Clara looked at him directly. "Yes," she said. Elias felt something steady settle in his chest. Not doubt, not fear, but certainty. He stepped a little closer. "I don't want you to leave," he said quietly. Clara's expression softened even more. "I wasn't planning to," she replied. Elias let out a small breath, almost like relief. "I'm not the easiest person," he said. Clara smiled. "I noticed." Elias almost smiled back. "But I'm trying," he added. Clara nodded. "And that's enough." The wind moved gently across the land, carrying the scent of fresh grass and new beginnings. That night, they sat together under the stars, just like before. But everything felt different. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a home. And Elias Boone was no longer just a man who lived alone. He was a man who had learned something important. Life does not always give you what you expect. Sometimes it gives you something better. Something you didn't plan for. Something that changes everything in the quietest way. As Elias looked at Clara, sitting beside him under the wide open sky, he knew one thing for certain. The life he once thought he wanted was gone, and in its place was a life he would never trade for anything.